Hello, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, and welcome back to Tome Raider, where we've read 3 Sherlock Holmes stories this week. I'm joined as ever by my book club buddy Dan Murgatroyd. How you doing?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, and let's just
Apart from half groggy, just like
yeah, I am just gonna check the audio for the stream because this is an all audio stream really in the content, so you really don't want that to have an issue.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, just hearing only one of us or none of us, and it's just crackling fireplace.
You know what? Why not? uh,
Yeah.
okay. So yeah, that all
Uh,
seems to
oh,
be
wouldn't
working.
that be irritating? That's good. But wouldn't it be irritating if we're on for say 2 hours, we don't realise it's just crackling fireplace, and it's by far our best stream?
Yeah.
That
Oh.
would that would be irritating. But
Uh.
hey, yes. So
I've got to
So we have some
update
more
that
stories of
thumbnail.
Holmes and Watson.
Yep. And this week it's the adventure of the Reigate Squires. I think that's how you pronounce it. The adventure of the Crooked Man and the adventure of the Resident Patient. Is that some sort of a precursor to Resident Evil? Only
Yes.
time will tell.
Well, time has told. But
Yes.
you will find out shortly when we actually get. So sorry if my microphone picked that up, but a man with a very large stood as by therefore a small penis drove past that.
Okay, I wish
Sorry, there is a
Discord had you.
correlation. I am not responsible for it.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. Discord kind of
Cut out for
chopped up
that.
your voice a bit during that, but very loud motorcycle, therefore small dick energy was what I gathered. Is that accurate?
Yes. Extra loud, exhausted motorcycle equals small penis. Yes.
And
That is a habit I picked up from a university chum, noting that.
uh, hey, the
Yeah.
correlation is there. You didn't put it
Yes,
there.
anyway.
I forgot to close the
Yeah.
brackets on Tome Raider.
But
Oh
anyway,
well.
to a time where we didn't have to. Yeah. At a time where we didn't have to worry about motorcycles ruining our day, just cholera, diphtheria, plague.
And loads of drugs.
So you know, America in the years. Yeah, yeah, and a shit ton of drugs. Just the great binge.
Yeah. Oh.
Sherlock hadn't openly been taking any in the story since the
That one
second,
time he had cocaine.
the Sign of the Four, been mentioned, but we've not seen Sherlock. Yes,
No. He did
4% solution, don't you know?
Yeah, he did offer some to Watson.
Yeah,
So, the Reigate
yes.
Squires.
Peer pressure at its finest.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, so the Reigate Squires, we begin not at 221B Baker Street, pardon me, but a house in the countryside. Right,
Zounds!
because somehow, pardon me, yes, because somehow Watson has persuaded Sherlock to go to the countryside without there being a case first.
Yeah, which he
Namely,
famously
Sherlock is very ill, does not like.
yeah, he does not like the country
Yeah.
because there is still crime there and there are fewer people around to prevent it. As he established in, I believe
Yeah.
it was the Copper Beaches.
Yes, it was. But yes, but Sherlock is gravely ill after having worked himself to the point of exhaustion and then well beyond it on a case I don't think we have actually encountered so far and may not actually get later on, because
Yeah.
it is sort of a thing of too recent public knowledge, so we won't talk about it.
Well,
In which, in that period, he had multiple times where he was awake for 5 days straight without rest. And let me tell you from uni experience, I've done 10 days with a grand total of 6 hours sleep, and all of that was in the last 3 days of it. It is not pleasant. You start hallucinating by that point at 5 days. So no wonder he needed rest after.
yeah, I think I hallucinated after one particularly brutal all-nighter. And I think
Yeah.
and the worst part of that was I didn't even meet the deadline. That was the first time I didn't meet a deadline.
Yeah. I ended up when I was saving backups, I ended up picking up something on my memory stick and therefore transferring it onto my safe copies. So I screwed myself by essentially corrupting 3 assignments that were due in a week. The first one hours late. So and then 2 Demon Theatre shows
Yeah,
and
I still have
various
my Demon
other
Theatre T-shirt.
committee commitments. Yeah, so do I somewhere.
Yeah,
But yes, that was staying up that long. It takes a bit of time to recover, and is not nice.
yeah. All that to say,
That
we
was the point we
empathise.
tried to make, and yes, we empathise. It sent you so out of it that Sherlock agreed to go to the countryside to stay with John's old friend in the countryside, and he actually seems to enjoy it, mostly because John's friend was actually quite an interesting fellow, and Watson was right that the two of them would get on.
Yeah. Watson has a good
Yeah.
sense for his friend. Yeah.
Yes.
As much as Sherlock
Colonel
is an
Hayter.
enigma to others.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Colonel Hayter, not to be confused
Yes.
with...
Watson.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. Discord is not your
Hello.
friend
Yes.
today.
No. No. I'm on. It is dipping between two. Oscillating between 2 and 3 bits of picking me up, so it's not doing great today.
Yeah.
Not doing as good as Tuesday, where I turned up halfway through the session. Sorry about that, Hawk.
No, it's all right. Nobody was
Yeah.
mad. I explained that. Well, they all know you have a good reputation for these things, and I explained that if you're not here and you're not notifying them, you're probably unconscious.
Yeah.
I thought that was the
Yes.
statistical most likely scenario.
Yes, it was by far.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, the Reigate Squires.
Yeah.
we will get through this story eventually. We're meant to be sticking to 20 minutes on this.
Okay. All right. I'll allow for 10 minutes of preamble on this one. Okay. Just because we've already had it.
Yes.
So,
well, we did start the story, and we did say there'd be like 10 minutes of analysis and facts, roughly, so it worked.
yeah.
But yes, Holmes and Watson are in Colonel Hayter's house. Watson met Hayter in Afghanistan, where he was a doctor, and Holmes agrees because he's been ill, he's overworked himself over some great work, And as Colonel Hayter is a bachelor, he doesn't have to worry about the niceties of a woman being present, basically.
Yeah, they
It's
don't use those words,
sort
but
of
that is
almost a
very
theme
much
again.
what he says. Yeah.
But when Holmes understood that the establishment was a bachelor one and that he would be allowed the fullest freedom, he fell in with my plans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, this shows how things have changed in sort of the world of this line. On the evening of our arrival, we were sitting in the Colonel's gun room after dinner. Holmes stretched upon the sofa, while Hayter and I looked over his little armory of firearms.
Yeah, that's
Country living, where you can have guns.
I think you still can as long
Yeah.
as you own the land you're on.
Yeah. There are various restrictions, but this is just sort of like, yes, and now we come to the armory, which he probably only has because he is a soldier more than a country fellow.
Yeah.
But he mentions offhandedly that he's going to take one up to bed with him because there's been an alarm recently. And
Oh no.
this peaks. What?
No, I was just going. It piques. You were saying it piques Holmes' interest, and Watson's like, no, no. I will get a spray bottle.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, it's very much so. Because
Bad Holmes.
a man
Bad.
who lives nearby, Old Acton, is was robbed, and Holmes starts going, "Ooh, a case," and Watson gets the spray bottle. Ollie puts it into bad Holmes, bad.
It's supposed to be resting.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
Of course.
Oh no, you don't. No. It's very much the father in Holy Grail going, stop that bloody singing! There'll be no singing.
Cut that out. Cut that out.
No mysteries. No.
You're not.
Yeah.
You're not working a case while I'm here.
Or the parents of an anime protagonist shaving their heads so they don't have the ridiculous hairstyle. No, this is not happening. This is not happening.
Yeah. And of course, it's all for naught because events would conspire against Watson in that endeavour.
Yes, because on that night, the next night, there is a murder at another country home that has been made to look like a robbery gone wrong, or is believed to be a robbery gone wrong. I have rather given the game away.
Well, I mean, it's a Sherlock Holmes story.
But given the length of this, yeah, and yes, one of a member of the staff at the second house has been murder has been killed. William the coachman, and Holmes tries to get involved, and Watson gets a bigger spray bottle out. So he goes, fine, and lies down. And then the local police turn up because they've heard that Sherlock's in the area and they want his help because they don't have a clue.
Okay, you can have a little bit of a case.
Like,
you can have a little case as a treat.
Yes. Yes. And while exasperated and wishing he could have just. And probably wishing that they'd brought the cocaine solution and just so that he could knock Holmes out for this.
Yeah.
But yes, they get taken to the scene of the murder, and the two houses are sort of the biggest and the richest, biggest houses and the richest families are the ones owning it. And we also found out on the way over that there is a long-term dispute between the two families because Acton seems to have a claim for a large chunk of the land that the other family have, and they are called the Cunninghams.
Yeah.
Acton versus Cunningham, a long-standing court case apparently over who actually owns the land.
Yeah.
And if you've read enough Sherlock Holmes, you can start to see where some of this is going. But
In terms of
yeah,
I've actually got a little different on that. In terms of how many chapters or table of contents of the audio version, we appear to be halfway down it at the end of this week's content.
yes,
I don't know whether
yes,
that
but
means we've read half of Sherlock Holmes, because two of the stories at least are very much longer. But it might.
yeah, there are four. There are four novels, and
Yeah,
I believe when I looked it up, 50-something short stories. So it depends on how the short stories are done, as sort of like on the audio as to whether it does that. But
yeah,
we will find out. But yes. So Holmes and Watson have been well, Holmes is happily going there. Watson's more begrudgingly there with the squirt bottle for when it is enough case has
yeah,
happened.
yeah.
And he's like, no, tit, lie. But they, yes, they get there, and I believe that they meet an Inspector Forrester, and I believe that Holmes actually quite likes Inspector Forrester. He pays him many a compliment in this story, more so than he's done to every officer in Scotland Yard combined so far.
Yeah.
Which is
His opinion of
which is
Scotland Yard is well noted.
yeah. Which, as a note, the two cops in which he is only seems to have good opinions of, both work in the countryside.
Yeah, that is true.
Where yeah, like he's got ones that he's got good opinions of in cities, but there's always a caveat. It's sort of like they lack one of the three chief things to be a truly great detective. There's always a fault that gets pointed out, whereas with the countryside detectives, you would expect to be getting a bit of a reputation as bumpkins. He only has praise for, though he also doesn't give them a second thought afterwards. So
Yeah, this is true.
it's possible. Yeah, but they get there and they examine uh, and they learn that the case, as it is told, is that Williams grounds the coachman and interrupted someone trying to rob the Cunningham place,
Yeah.
and there was a scuffle, a shot in close confines, and then Cunningham Senior saw a slight sign of a man running, and there is a gap in their hedge that supposedly wasn't there before, through which the blackguard escaped. Yes,
Damn him and such.
and actually, they haven't even left yet. Yeah, they're actually being informed on the case by Forrester, even. But Forrester inquires to like whether William said anything that was going on and stuff. From Forrester has already covered all the bases of sort of like the story they want, like talking to the victim's mother, talking to the witnesses and stuff like that. He's actually been what we would call a policeman, and then covered his bases. And he's found a scrap of evidence that was clutched in William's hand,
Yeah.
which reads as if it's an appointment, but I can't actually read what they've given me because they've done. Because the line is a facsimile of which is here reproduced, and then they don't actually give you in normal writing, and the quality is not brilliant.
No,
At 11:45, learn what maybe is what I think it says.
no, that is what it
So
says.
excellent. I'm not good with cursive, and it's not particularly clear, even if it wasn't cursive
Yeah, this
on the thing.
this
And they all
writing
presume
is not
the
very
point.
legible.
Yeah. Yeah. Holmes is particularly interested in the writing. He says it's remarkable, or it's of extraordinary interest. And then these are much deeper waters than I thought. And then he doesn't comment on it again at the moment. And they work on the assumption that, they discuss the assumption that the victim and the burglar were in cahoots, despite that William is supposedly a man of good standing and is noted as being honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they sort of leave it there. Holmes has reclaimed his sort of fervent energy, as Watson notes, and they make their way to the Cunninghams. And then, they words.
They'll come to you.
Yeah.
So they make their way to the Cunninghams. And
And Holmes goes, Watson, your country trip has been a distinct success. I have had a charming morning. Watson's there going, you should be on a sofa with a steaming pot of tea next to you with a cold bag of some sort on your head. Not dealing with this bullshit. God damn you, countryside criminals!
So, he gets there, and at some point he establishes that the burglar actually got there first, as I recall.
Yes, all the evidence. The long and the short of it is that every aspect of the story that the father and son told seems to have actually been incorrect. Like, while yes, he did die of a revolver wound, there is no evidence it was close range, but that it was in fact shot at some distance from him, because there are no powder burns or powder marks on the man, as a close range would have. That William had to actually open the door to get in, almost break down the door to get in, rather than the burglar doing it, I think was one thing they said.
Yeah.
And the inspector had spent great time trying to find the rest of the scrap of paper that was in the man's hand, that was in William's hand, but no success.
Yeah. And Sherlock gets a detail wrong and then has a bit of a lapse.
Yes, he's written a piece offering a reward for information to go into the papers on behalf of them, but he's put the wrong time. He said 1:45 rather than 12:45. And the senior Cunningham corrects it. Well, there's also some disparaging comments made towards Holmes's reputation as being unearned.
Remember that, because it's going to be important later.
Yeah, and there's also a moment where Holmes collapses just as Inspector Forrester was about to mention the paper, and there's a great kerfuffle, and they have to get him inside and lay him down because he hasn't recovered yet. But Holmes wants to concoct. Well, concoct's the completely wrong word or sentiment. Wants to investigate the two men's bedrooms to get a clearer idea of what their view is like, because that's where they said they were, and to see what would be like the situation and how they would have heard it, what they would have seen, and stuff like that. So to start with Junior's room, there's nothing much in there, and he said he was in the dressing room just off it. But they move over into Senior's room before all that, and Sherlock, while the inspector, Senior and Junior are further forward, leans in front of Watson and knocks over a table which has oranges and fresh water on it in Senior's room, and then goes, Watson, watch where you're going, essentially doing the old school prank of you do something wrong, then blame someone else immediately and make it look like they did it.
Yeah.
But while everyone is doing that, Holmes has vanished.
And the next they hear of him is a scream of "Help! Help! Murder!"
Yes, just after Junior and Senior have left the room, because Junior says he saw where Holmes went. And it turns out he's in the dressing room next door, or Junior's dressing room, because the killers are none other than Senior and Junior.
Yes. One of whom has a gun, but is quickly disarmed.
Yeah. Junior is strangling Sherlock, while Senior is twisting Sherlock's wrist to stop him being able to fight Junior off. And then after they're taken off, Junior goes for a revolver and stop. And Sherlock reveals the rest of the note was in Junior's dressing gown, along with a revolver. I believe that's where it was, and that they were the ones who had killed William. Now they are carted away, and it gets explained more in full that the first crime, which had included many bizarre items stolen, ranging from plated candlesticks to a ball of string, you revealed that the first burglary was committed by the Cunninghams, who were specifically looking for the document that Acton had that proved that he owned after this what they claimed was their estate. Old Acton has been brought in at this point alongside Watson and the Colonel, and they're just sitting at the Colonel's, and Holmes comes back after getting having a gentlemanly conversation with Senior and getting all the details, as always seems to happen. Junior is described as unrepentant and almost beast-like, if memory serves.
Yeah.
Was in his attitudes. To be fair, he did just try to strangle Sherlock Holmes, so Sherlock probably wasn't in the best mood to try and treat him civilized if he did go in to see him.
Yeah.
But they faked a general burglary. So they were unable to get the Acton's document because Acton was sensible and had kept the document in the bank. And in case something like this was tried, he literally foresaw their plan
and
foiled it preemptively. Yeah. But the reason why William had to die is because he'd seen the Cunninghams before break into Acton's and get and making their way back, and it was implied that he was holding it up that he was essentially going to be blackmailing them. Oh yeah, one of the clues that told Sherlock as well that their story was complete phooey was while a lot of the ground was hard and therefore not taking footprints, there was a large ditch of essentially mud on the other side of the hedge where they said the assailant ran away from, and there was no footprints whatsoever in it. So it was just like, clearly no one came through here last night. Right, so, yes, and how Sherlock came to deduce that they were both involved rather than one or the other was from the scrap of paper and the writing test he did earlier. Because, as it turns out, the note was written in two hands, and it was every other word was written in the opposite hand, and he deduced characteristics of the two people from the style of writing and such. Like one was older, one was younger, one was more dominant and forced the other more so to go through with the plan.
Yeah.
And the detail he supposedly missed was a deliberate attempt to get a sample of the father's handwriting.
Yeah.
And the fit he had when was about to mention the scrap of paper was to distract them so that they would remember, yes, could destroy it. Probably should do it now for the rest of the note.
Yeah.
Which was recovered and read, if you will only come round at 11:45 to the East Gate, you will learn what will very much surprise you and maybe be of the greatest service to you and also to Annie Morrison. But say nothing to anyone upon the matter.
And with that context,
Yeah.
and a corner was torn off, which is, I mean, I do actually like how they did that with the facsimile. Like, I don't want to try and read it, but writing out a note and then tearing a corner off is probably what happened there.
Yeah. But yes, this one was much easier to read because this one actually had to had the writing in plain English underneath, not in poor quality cursive as it is on the thing I'm reading.
Yeah.
Because I'm reading off of a screen, whereas Ollie.
Yeah. Well.
So cursive does not necessarily.
Yeah, it's the same in the book. I'll confirm that for you. There were illustrations in the Strand magazine at the time these were originally published, and the book has preserved those.
Yeah. But, yes. So there was a robbery and the second supposed robbery, which was actually just a murder to cover up who did the first robbery, and therefore led to discovering who did the first robbery. Because there was supposedly a number of robberies going on in the countryside in general at the time. Because, as Holmes says, the country is full of crime.
Yeah.
But Holmes seemed to have quite enjoyed his brief stay in the countryside, and Watson was sort of beside himself with annoyance. It's just like, meant to be resting. Then he takes on the case, and then he fakes being worse to get all in aid of the case.
I will get a hose.
God damn you, Holmes!
Yeah. Would
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't suppose they would have had spray bottles or hoses. Well, hoses, but I don't know where technology was at this point in time.
It seems less likely, but to add bizarre action of search histories, garden hose knows origin. Sort of AI. You are probably incorrect, and I do not want you anyway.
Oh, add fucking into the search terms. That will disable it. Although, that's an unusually aggressive search for the origin of the garden hose.
Origin of the fucking garden hose. Yeah. Well, there was a cartoon of them in 1916, which is so far the earliest date I can see in the article on it. So, about 26 years after these were, no, about 20 years after these were released, the Golden Hose would have come into existence. So it wasn't far off from Holmes being able to just go, no, bad Holmes. But yes, that was the adventure of the Reigate Squires. What did you think of it?
I mean, yeah, I thought it was interesting. I thought we were seeing a rare case of Sherlock Holmes on bad form getting something wrong, and it's no, no, all part of the plan.
Yes, according to plan.
Yep. Uh,
Yeah.
Also, an excursion into the
I hate to
country that
say this.
Holmes enjoyed. So,
Yes, and it didn't come from starting a case. The case was incidental.
yeah.
We get to see a bit more of Holmes's acting capabilities, and we also get get a bit more brutality than we do in some, because someone actually tried to kill Holmes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, which
We,
that does not happen often.
it's the first time it's happened so far, I believe. Or at least, that's as far.
Yes,
Well, no, no. People have tried to kill Holmes before, but not like. I mean, there was the whole thing with uh, the sign of the four. Uh,
in the in the sign of the four during the boat chase, the um the killer tried to kill more of them
yeah.
while
The
being
one we,
pursued.
the one we affectionately dubbed Mr. Creosote.
Yes, it's the creosote. Yes, I was trying to remember, but I couldn't. It was going along the lines of Mr. Kringle, but it's just like, no, that's Father Christmas, isn't it?
Yeah. Because he
Yeah,
made a footprint in creosote. And also Mr. Creosote was a Monty
yeah.
Python character.
And also, I imagine a nickname David Dickinson has had at one point or another. Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, it was an interesting story, and it did buck some of the trends of well, it not being in the city, and Holmes not being sort of at his full faculty from the off, is what the assumption was, and the possibility of him making mistakes. But
Yeah.
then it pulls the rug off of its attempted rug pull and goes, "Ha
I
He
think
was fine-ish
yeah.
all along. He was,
He can have just a little bit of crime as a treat. Uh, but
yeah, nothing too strenuous. Solved in a day.
yeah. Oh, the country does offer a very different atmosphere for criminal investigation, doesn't it? Like the reason Sherlock Holmes doesn't like being there or doesn't like the country is probably the reason it works so well as a crime setting is because it is a lot easier in such places to get away with stuff like this, especially in that time period, because there would have been like less people around to notice, say, a scream.
Yeah, yeah. And there's also at the same time, it's just sort of like when you develop a suspect pool, it is also a lot smaller. In this case, it's the suspect pools were also the killers. Because it's just sort of like, oh, we're the only witnesses. What do you mean that makes us the lead suspects. Ignore the gun and the fact that we have the rest of the note and reason to want him dead.
And the fact that we tried to
We're
kill the person
witnesses. We can't.
investigating us.
Yeah. I wondered, did they hire Sir Hugh Massingbird? The greatest legal mind in British history. Or the greatest mind in British legal history.
Yeah.
I'm glad I killed the bastard and tried to strangle Sherlock.
And
Rob
not only got him off.
old actor.
Yeah.
Now the family of the deceased debate has the blood washed out of his jacket.
Yeah.
The case of the bloody knife. And then the implication of Oscar Wilde being a man, a very manly man, old butch Oscar, and have him sent down for being a homosexual when he had 26 illegitimate children. It's just,
I have that book with all the Blackadder scripts.
Sorry.
Right there.
Yeah.
Among the big Sherlock Holmes book and the 6 or 7 other books that are on my bed at the moment.
Ah, the bedbury. Combination of the bed and the library.
Yeah. Yeah. I really should get to reading some of those so I can put them back on the bookshelf. Anyway.
Yeah. Just one last aside on that. That reminds me of one of my lecturers once for creative writing when I needed some books for today's session for people to practice analysis of. So I just grabbed the smaller pile off of my bedside table. There were spares after one each. That was the smaller pile on her bedside table. Then again, her office had more books in it than anything else.
Yeah. Well, academics.
Well, this was worse than it's sort of like in terms of tidiness than any I saw, because you had to, when trying to navigate through the room, there was like a very small path which your feet could go without stepping on a book. She was a great lecturer. Yeah. I lost to DMU when she retired.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was Reigate Squires, and now we move to the Crooked Man. I think the second of the locked room mysteries after the Sign of the Four.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in case anyone who's listening, whatever it is, doesn't understand what I mean by a locked room mystery, is a murder is committed in a room, but the door is locked and they cannot think of how the murderer got in or out of there. Except this one is a bit more obvious as to how they got in there, but it's more of a case of, well, where's the key gone in this instance?
Yeah.
Rather than, it's impossible. No murderer could have got in and out, except through this very large window, which someone does get in and out of in part of the investigation. So the mystery is more of where is the key that's locked everything, as opposed to how did they get in and out. That will become clear as they go.
But to start, we join Watson in his home that is not 221B Baker Street.
Yes, because this is a few months after his marriage. Yes.
They pack a lot in around this time period, don't they?
Yeah, no, I think it undermines slightly the Christmas Story, the Blue Carbuncle, because that was ostensibly the first time he'd seen Holmes since his marriage. But this is implied to be before that, if memory serves.
Yeah.
So it gets a little confusing at times.
Yeah. And
but
Watson is surprised by the ringing of his bell at 11:15. It's nearly midnight.
Yes. Quarter to 12 again. What is it in that number and crime?
Yeah.
But yes. Watson has just had like his final pipe of the evening, and is like, Mary's gone to bed, and he will be joining her shortly. Which, in the Victorian period, would have had a room or possibly a different room, as it is. But he's there, and it's just like, oh, the patient, this is an emergency, I should deal with it. And then it's just like, oh, it's Holmes.
yeah.
And it's just sort of like, yeah, and he's just sort of like, come in, and Holmes immediately sort of goes on to his deductions, noticing that he still smokes the same mix of tobacco as his bachelor days. And that he's still too accustomed to wearing a uniform. Because he's got his handkerchief in his sleeve, which I don't associate as a uniform thing, but he also deduces that he's had workmen in to fix something, British workmen, which he refers to as he's a token of evil. The British workman, which I think of there'd be a fair few people who'd agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not necessarily British workmen, just the British.
Yeah. His actual line is, "Sorry to see that you've had the British workman in the house. He's a token of evil."
Yes.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So he asks Watson to put him up
He
for the
asks
night.
Watson if he can for the night. Yep. And Watson's like, yes, we still have a bachelor accommodation available. And he's just like, excellent. I shall fill the final peg on your hat stand. And just sort of like that. And then he's just sort of like, he's offered food, which he declines because he ate at Waterloo. He's like, but I would happily smoke a pipe with you.
Yeah.
And Watson's probably going, but I just finished. Can you not tell by the tapping out of the ashes? But why not?
Yeah.
Sherlock's here. Mary can wait. And now to borrow a line from the BBC adaptation of Sherlock is just sort of like one of Watson's girlfriends to Watson. This is my friend's all wrong about you. You are a very good boyfriend.
And Sherlock Holmes
Sherlock's
is a very
lucky to have
man.
Yes, which is probably a bit of what Mary feels sometimes. But then again, there are other times where she actively encourages him to go on to Holmes's cases. It's just like, get out of my hair, please.
Yeah.
Because, of course, this is a time in which Mary travelling on her own and escorted, even to a family member, which we know she doesn't have, would still be a bit, ooh, that seems a bit dangerous or scandalous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but
Holmes starts regaling him of the case so far, of which we have joined him in media res, as it were.
Yeah, and he also asked Sherlock. He also asked Watson if he'd like to join him on the case on the next day, and Watson is very much like, yes, my neighbour will deal with my patients again as long as I have time to let him know. But the case so far is essentially man found dead in sitting room after arguing with wife.
A Colonel Barclay of the
Locked
Royal
door, but
Widows.
no signs of yeah, Colonel Barclay.
Yeah. In Aldershot.
Not Reg Barclay of the yeah,
Yeah.
not Reg Barclay of the Enterprise D. Hypochondriac.
No, not
Sorry, sorry.
not Lieutenant Barclay, Colonel Barclay. Evidently he had a promotion.
Yeah. Yeah. By travelling back 400 years, God, this hypochondria must be going absolutely crazy. Yeah, but
he's the one that
yeah,
had the holodeck
but we learn.
obsession, wasn't he?
Yeah, he suffers from holo addiction.
Yeah, that episode was
Yeah.
tough to watch for me, especially when they found his version
Yeah.
of Deanna Troy. Oh, okay, I'm getting off track, but like that was a very
We
I don't.
will discuss that afterwards. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't do well with secondhand embarrassment was what I was leading to, and it was very strong in that episode.
Yeah, I am much the same.
Yeah.
But first-hand embarrassment, absolutely fine. As long if we can make absolute prats of ourselves.
Oh,
Other people
absolutely.
making prats of themselves, we can't cope with.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we learned that Colonel Barclay was married when he was a sergeant and was well liked among the amongst the officers and such. And he now lives in an area of mostly military, near a camp. His wife was the daughter of a former colour sergeant of the same navy regiment. Well, corps is what they say. I was thinking Irish regiment, and it somehow transformed to navy in my head. Yeah. But the two adapted to their new surroundings and social standing, as it were, in the area. And the wife got on well with the other military wives. He got on well with the other members of the military in the area. Their life appeared to be a uniformly happy one. And the person passing on the information, Sherlock says, he has never heard of a misunderstanding between Barclay and anyone else. Yeah. He is well noted as being a jovial old soldier, but there were the occasional moments of violence and vindictiveness. Never directed to his wife, you see. It is stated, but he also seemed to be subject to, pardon me, bouts of depression as well.
Yeah.
You know. And and they have no children. And that's sort of the background information. And on the day itself, the wife, Mrs. Barclay, who, what was her first name? Had it a second ago. Nancy.
Yes.
Yeah. She's a member of the. She's a Roman Catholic, and she's been busy with lots of groups on the local one, which is the Guild of St. George. And she, on the night in question, went to a guild meeting to deal with essentially sorting donated clothes and stuff like that. It's the main guild thing, and it's and all seemed well and cordial when she left the house, with the coachman saying that it was just sort of like she was assuring him that she wouldn't be long and see you soon, etc., etc. She called upon a neighbour, another Miss Morrison, to go with the last story, though I don't think it's the same one
No.
on who was mentioned. And the two of them went on to the meeting, which was a mere 40 minutes. And they were back by a 9:15 after dropping Miss Morrison off. And then she retreated into the morning room, which has a large glass folding door onto the lawn, French doors or the French windows, that style of thing, I would imagine. And yeah, she went in there, which was noted as unusual for her habit. She didn't normally go in at this point because it's a morning room, not late evening room or early evening. Called for tea, did the lamp. The tea was also contrary to her usual habits. And then Reginald, no, not Reginald, he's Barclay. And Barclay saw this and joined her.
Yeah.
But when the tea was being brought up to her, they were surprised that there was a sound of a furious row going on, or a furious altercation, they call it, which I always think sounds like there should be the sound of sticks hitting each other or into each other's bodies.
Yeah.
With the phrase "furious altercation," it's not quite gone into actual violence, so like nothing sharp or guns, but sticks certainly.
Yeah.
Which also would be a fun way to start a Romeo and Juliet. Have the opening bit transformed into just a playground stick fight of "Do you bite your thumb at me, sir? I do bite my thumb, but not at you, sir."
Is there a version of
But,
Romeo
I
and
will try and
Juliet that
stop
takes
quoting
place
Romeo.
on a school playground? Because that seems like a gimmick that hasn't been done yet.
No. But
Outside of school plays, I mean.
funerals and yeah, no, but funerals and stuff like that are a little hard to do on a school playground
Yeah.
and fit into the wider context.
Yeah, that would actually be quite
But
dark.
anyway, yes, much more so than Baz Luhrmann's over-the-top version from the early 2000s, I believe.
I like that version.
I do too. It's very over the top, even by Shakespeare and Baz Luhrmann standards. But that is not.
Yeah, sorry, I am terrible for staying on track tonight. It's
no, I'm the one who's constantly going off track as well by just doing notes and random comments. We're not being on track tonight. Right? Probably because it's Thursday, so we have no discipline on Thursdays because we don't normally stream today.
Yeah.
But the housemaid tried to get into the room, but the door was locked. So naturally, her first response was to go and get the cook and the other women who worked there to listen in, because and this is treated as in like, yes, this is the correct and expected thing for a woman to do, to get extra people to gossip, to listen to the gossip.
Yeah.
So, given that their employers are arguing in a way that they don't normally, there is also a hint of concern in there as well. But there is a slight, yes, women will get women to gossip underline in there.
Yeah.
And everyone though agreed that there were only two voices in there, where those of Barclay and his wife. Barclay's comments were subdued and abrupt, so they weren't audible to the listener, as it were. Whereas Nancy's were more bitter, and the rained voice was plainly heard, with her saying "You coward" over and over again.
Yeah.
What can be done now? What can be done now? Give me my life back. Yeah, I will never breathe the same air as you again, coward, coward. And that is actually pretty much the whole conversation that we are given when it ends in a sudden, dreadful cry in a man's voice and a crash and a piercing scream of a woman's voice. And
You have a woman's voice, my lord.
yeah, and while there is more screaming from the woman going on and on, there's uh, a a hysterical teenager in a survival camp survival horror film after seeing a spider, let alone a first corpse. What's going on? The coachman tries to break down the door and utterly fails. The door is too sturdy and the lock too strong. As it seems to be. And then he has a sudden idea, remembering the huge windows on the other side of the room,
Yeah, those
slash
will
the
help.
other doors, which he then rushes around from and climbs in. Yeah, they are described as the long French windows in this one, on where it's been described as doors earlier. So yeah, one of the windows was opened, which is given to be understood to be normal in summertime, which this is assumed to be. He got in without difficulty. His Nancy had ceased screaming and was stretched insensible upon a couch. Ouch. So the smelling salts are possibly needed because that is the solution at the time. And the husband, Barclay, is his feet are tilted over the side of an armchair and his head is above the ground, and he's lying stone dead in the pool of his own blood.
Oh.
And the coachman goes to open the door from this side, but finds no key in the doorway, and he can't find the key anywhere else in there. Yeah, so they move so the wife was assumed to be the prime target. Shock, horror. And the colonel's body was placed upon the sofa after they got her out, so a more careful scene could be made to examine the tragedy, and the man's dignity could be respected, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, jagged cut on the back of his head, about 2 inches long, is the cause of is believed to be the cause of death. Believed to be from a strong blow to the back of the head, which, given the scene that we're sort of presented with, doesn't actually make any sense. Because implied that he's fallen backwards, the back of his head is on the ground, so you hit someone in the head and to fall backward, there's some momentum pushing them away. Yeah. There was also there was a club with a bundle nearby found upon the floor as well, believed to be the murder weapon, and it was believed to be the colonel's, though none of the staff recognised it. But he had collected many a trophy from his time in the military, because that's what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and eventually they managed to get the door open permanently by getting a locksmith in because again the key had not shown up. Yeah, and that was the state of things when Sherlock had been summoned to consult upon the case.
Yeah. Do you reckon they offered him 2,000 then and there and 15 when he reached Aldershot? Sorry.
Yeah, but yeah, Yeah. Oh dear. It just clicked. Oh,
Really?
yeah. Yeah, no, my brain was not at 100%.
Uh, uh,
Yeah. Yeah, so but Sherlock had cross questioned the servant, and the only new thing that came up was the mention of David twice. Now, Mr. Barclay is not called David. I keep calling him Reginald, but I do not believe his name actually is Reginald.
nope.
Old, his name was James. It says so in the next line. As a reminder.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, and the Colonel's face was when he died was set to uh, into the most dreadful expression of fear and horror, which a human countenance is capable of assuming. Which is another description that is familiar to us from a study in Scarlet. That the first um, victim of Jefferson Hope was said to have that kind of look upon his face when he died.
yeah. And of
Yeah,
course,
but
he also tells Watson about an animal that he couldn't identify. And I'm quite proud to say that I guessed the animal on his description when I was reading it.
yeah, I didn't. I didn't. My brain again not functioning at full while doing that. But the wife is labelled as temporarily insane due to what has gone on, which probably not the case. It's probably a much more
She's
sort of
having an
traumatic.
understandable reaction to a circumstance.
Yes, and it is probably would fit much more into a trauma response if it was as it was a bit more extreme, even than just sort of like my husband is dead. It's just sort of like the nature of how it happened as well, because there is probably a difference between your husband passing away and your husband passing away suddenly with a look of absolute terror on his face.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Especially as it has been suggested so far, they were murdered by someone clobbering them over the head with a club, which would definitely be a more traumatic experience
Yeah. Than just
than you
losing
would
them.
think about it. Yeah, yeah. But the police had spoken to Miss Morrison next door, or who spent the who had travelled with them, and she did not have any knowledge of what had caused the ill humours between husband and wife.
Yeah.
I've and couldn't think of anything offhand. And Sherlock again showing how much a pipe is a matter of is part of his methods. Having gathered these facts, Watson, I smoked several pipes over them.
As he does.
From what was crucial to separate what was crucial. It's merely incidental. Yes, at least it wasn't 5 cushions and a pound of shag.
Yep.
Because the way it has to be said is like how you pronounce Jack when you're referring to a car. The car brand, it's a Jack. An
Yeah.
ounce of shag.
Yeah. Uh,
Yes, but the key was still eluding everyone. The most thorough search had been taken for it. Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, and they and this is where Holmes reveals about the strange creature that had climbed up the curtains to get to the bird cage. It's never actually stated whether they were successful or not at getting into the bird cage. It just mentioned that this creature climbed up towards it.
Yeah.
So we don't know if the bird is alive or dead. This is Sherlock's bird. We don't know if the bird's alive or dead, not because there's some constant sort of nonsense going on, but because the author didn't bother telling us.
Because it wasn't important to the case, and therefore Sherlock Holmes doesn't care.
Yes. But Sherlock had deduced that there was another man in the room at some point, having located 5 clear footprints or impressions of the man, and he across the garden and in the room himself.
Yeah.
Oh, so you managed to yeah. Yeah, so he concludes the animal was the man's companion.
Yeah.
His companion? And Watson goes on, and they discount that it's a monkey, dog, or a cat of the animals. That's yes. Fourth prints when standing motionless. You see it is less than 15 inches from forefoot to hind. Add to that its length of neck and head, and you get a creature that's not much less than 2 feet long. Probably more if there is any tail. Or a stride of 3 inches.
Yeah.
Long body, short legs. Yeah, and
And I mean, 3 feet long kind of ruled out a ferret.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Yes.
I did
So,
guess this
yes.
on that description.
Yes. They've narrowed it down to a member of the Weasel or the Stoat tribe.
As it would
Which I
turn
do
out,
believe is actually incorrect to an
yeah, as it would turn out, it is a mongoose.
Yeah.
So they go to I believe they asked one of Nancy's friends about what happened, who had initially promised not to say anything, but seeing her friend's state, had decided to renege on that promise.
Yes, Miss Morrison. And turns out she knows more than she was letting on. Because there had been an incident on the way back. They had spotted the crooked man of the title.
The eponymous Crooked Man.
Yeah.
Crooked Man.
On the way back. Yeah. And while they were passing him in their carriage, I've forgotten what they called it offhand, and this crooked man threw out in hissed voices, or screamed in a dreadful voice, "My God, it's Nancy!" To which Nancy went as white as death and would have fallen down and had the dreadful-looking creature not caught hold of her.
Arthur Conan Doyle is very fond of describing people as creatures. He does it a lot. I've noticed.
Yeah, but yeah, yes, to anyone with any slight deformity or ethnicity,
yeah, it's a creature
there is
to
a
him.
high chance they will be called a creature, or indeed anyone of sufficiently low class will also have a higher chance of being called a creature.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Nancy treats the man with civility, and we we shall now try and use his name from now on because we now have his name. I thought you'd been dead these 30 years, Henry. He responds with, "So I have." And Nancy then says to Miss Morrison, just walk on, dear. I would like to have a word with this man. There is nothing to be afraid of. And Miss Morrison, who I unfairly suspect is probably named Mary, because there
Yeah.
are a lot of Marys in Arthur Conan Doyle's writing.
Yeah.
Um, she does walk on, and they talk for a couple of minutes. And she came down the street with her eyes blazing.
Oh wow.
And
I would think this would have been after the incident.
yeah, her eyes. This is where she's talking with. She's just spoken with Henry,
Yeah.
so she's just learned what's gone on.
Yeah.
So she's learned what's happened, time which we will explain shortly. So this is her on her way home, and she is angry, and the man and Henry also seems to be angry as his fists seem to be raised and there. And the only thing Nancy said to Miss Morrison is that promise not to tell this.
Yeah.
It's, she went, it's an old acquaintance of mine who has come down in the world. And yeah. This was actually this is all still taking place in Watson's front room, where they haven't actually left to go to the place yet. This is all Holmes's work beforehand, because the entire reason that Holmes is here is because he wants a witness when he confronts Henry, because he's found him and knows where he is and wants to get the story. And he thought, who better than my chronicler? Yeah. So yeah, part of like how we're located is there's not many men who have had his unfortunate deformities have happened to him, and when he tracks down the place, he found out there was a bad florin, quote unquote, in the money that he used to pay his deposit. It turns out to be an Indian rupee, which yeah, so it gives hints to the greater story that's gone on. But with that, as Holmes and Watson retire for the night, and put about in the morning, and by midday they find themselves at the scene of the tragedy and make their way to find or to visit the man. And he has relied on one of his irregulars. He seems to have hired a street urchin at this point to keep an eye and keep track of the man overnight while he was away.
Yeah.
Yeah, and is Mr. Henry Wood, late of India, I believe. I have come over this little matter of Colonel Berkeley's death. It's just sort of like, what should I know about that? That's what I want to ascertain. I suppose unless the matter is cleared up, Miss Berkeley, who is an old friend of yours, will in all probability be tried for murder. And Henry has a quote-unquote violent start at this statement, which we'd probably almost do with now a shock or a double take, is what we would say nowadays, I think.
Yeah. Language was
And there was a small bit of... Yeah, it's always interesting looking at how language has evolved.
Yeah. Like how excitement
Indeed,
has a much broader term.
Yeah. indeed, part of my degree was looking at how language has evolved and how the technology of publishing has also evolved,
Yeah.
and the very act of writing itself. But yeah, there's a bit of back and forth between them, where it's just sort of like Henry's trying to ascertain Holmes's interest in this, and Holmes is trying to get some details, which amounts to Holmes's interest is justice. Henry assures them that Nancy is innocent, and then Holmes is like, "No, so you're guilty." And then he goes, "I'm not." Then who killed Colonel James Barclay? Then it was Providence that killed him. But mind you, this I would have knocked his brains out, as it was in my heart to do. Would have had no more due from my hand. It was his only guilty conscience had not struck it. If his own guilty conscience had not struck him down, it was likely that Henry would have.
Yeah. So what happened was
then
basically he got startled, fell over, and bashed his head.
Yes, we learn Henry's story and why he had such dislike towards James. It's because back in the days when they were both in the military, they were in the same regiment, and they were both interested in the same girl, Nancy. Now, Nancy actually liked Henry over James, but because Henry at the time was fit and good looking and had a charm about him.
Yeah.
Now, Nancy's father preferred James, and James was in the position that when they were in a surrounded and were sending for ostensibly surrendering for reinforcements, James gave Henry a path that was supposedly unwatched by those forces surrounding them to get out and get the to alert other forces nearby. What he'd done at the same time was he'd also leaked the route that Henry would be taking, so he was captured near enough immediately and sold off as a slave.
Yeah.
And the full. Yeah, and
I mean, you can see why he'd hold a grudge.
For Preston. Yeah, and he spent many a year as a slave, going between a few owners at a point until he was a crippled wretch in his own world, or a wretched cripple in his own words. Probably because he is in that. He's made his living essentially as a street performer with his mongoose, which has and he learns when he comes back that James has married Nancy. Nancy believes him dead.
Yeah.
And he just wants to see her, and then he did, and he told her that, and they got into a great argument, and he, in sort of his fury and his passion, came in the window, and James keeled over at the sight of him. Probably at the sight of a man that he condemned to an absolutely horrible life, quite possibly death, suddenly standing before him, and the sign of all that he has put that man through before him. And Nancy fainted shortly thereafter, and he's like puts her to the side of the face, and then takes the key, intending to unlock the door and get help, and then realizes how bad this all looks.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, it does look pretty bad.
Yeah, and then in his haste, a bit of confusion, he stuck the key in his pocket. He dropped his club while he was chasing Teddy, the mongoose, to get him back, so he could then get out. Teddy had escaped from his box in the meantime.
So that explains where the key's been this whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, but he makes a comment to Sherlock. Basically says, we don't need any more information, but we may have to apply upon you once more the case if the case goes to trial, and we need you to and if Miss Barclay proves to be in serious trouble, he's like, I will of course come forward if that is the case. He's but Charlotte's like, but if not, there is no object in raking up this scandal against a dead man, foully as he has acted. You have at least the satisfaction of knowing that for 30 years of his life, his conscience bitterly reproached him for this wicked deed. And then he spots the officer he's been corresponding with out the window. So he then goes out and speaks with him. And the officer's like, Holmes, I suppose you have heard that all this fuss has come to nothing? And Holmes is like, what? The inquest is just over. The medical evidence showed conclusively that death was due to apoplexy. It's quite a simple case after all.
Apoplexy.
Which, apoplexy, yes. You'd think with an English degree I could read these things, but then dyslexia decides, hello! Which is cerebral hemorrhage / stroke.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, the shock of seeing this. And, Holmes goes, remarkably superficial after being said it was a simple case. It's like, come, Watson, and I don't think we shall be wanted here anymore. And Watson's going, there's one thing. If the husband's name was James and the other was Henry, what was this talk about David?
That one word, my dear Watson, could have told me the whole story had I been the ideal reasoner which you are so fond of depicting. It was evident, and it was a reference to the biblical David.
Yeah.
As in,
David's
and Goliath.
A little occasion. Yeah. Yeah.
But
yes. And that was the Crooked Man and the second locked room mystery.
Yeah, and
actually, that would be the third actually locked room mystery. As the second one would have been the one with the snake.
The speckled band. That one.
Band, yes. Sometimes trying to remember the names is harder than remembering the story.
Yeah, and when I say the speckled band, I want to say speckled Jim. So it's like,
yeah. You shot my speckled Jim.
We quite like Blackadder on this stream. Have you ever got that impression, listeners?
Yes, which in this case is me and you.
Yeah. I don't care. These are fun.
But yeah. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
We record them for posterity, and maybe someone will listen to them one day.
Yeah. Although, having said that, I am still kind of groggy, and that's not going away, and I can feel my focus waning. So, let's get on with the.
Shall we?
Sorry?
The resident patient.
Yeah.
Shall we get on with the resident patient quickly then?
If we can, but first, what are your general thoughts on the Crooked Man?
I liked it. I was not quite sure how it was going. I also didn't get that it was a mongoose. So it caught me a bit off guard, and of course I had great fun imagining this as Reginald Barclay half the time as well.
Yeah.
Just some sort of hollow adventure. But I enjoyed it. It's nice that there's actually a mystery that comes down to, it was actually just natural causes and no crime has actually been committed in this instance. though it probably would have been good if the historical crime had been acknowledged officially rather than just going, well, there's no point ruining a dead man's good name. I'm sorry for all you've been for, but take solace in the fact that the man who ruined your life and your body had a guilty conscience about it for 30 years.
Yeah. I mean,
But
that would be pretty
there is
cold
a
comfort.
yeah, but there is a non-zero chance that Henry Wood, it was his full name, is going to have much nicer accommodations in the near future.
Yeah.
If Nancy is still has feelings towards him, as is suggested by the fact that she is pissed off over finding out that her husband is the reason she didn't marry him 30 years ago.
Yeah, I'm sure
Yeah.
they have a lot to talk about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But what were your thoughts on it?
Well, I generally agree with everything you just said, but also, well, I did guess the mongoose. That was so I'm quite proud of that. If that's the only thing that I take from this, uh,
I guess the mongoose.
I guess the mongoose. uh,
Yeah.
Although
Instead
I also
of those
noted
shirts
that
that said
some,
I got
yeah, I also know this is one of the rare stories that Sherlock generally, apart from the last bit, narrates to Watson rather than Watson taking it down.
than Watson to us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
this is
Sherlock
Watson
like
narrating,
right.
relaying to us what Sherlock relayed to him as he said it, and uh, I mean it's not my preferred uh, framing device, I suppose, but for a short story, it does the job.
Yeah, we much prefer Watson explaining what he's seen and then what Holmes explains to him in
Yeah,
terms of when he asks questions for how did you work that out, as opposed to Holmes explaining everything to then Watson. But I suppose it does mean that Arthur Conan Doyle didn't need to necessarily write as evocatively about things because Sherlock states the facts,
yeah,
which possibly made it a quicker process. Because of course he was churning these out at a fair old rate at the time. Like his full novels were coming out in 6 months or less. Actually, I think the first one took 6 weeks to write, so that's a
Christ,
fair
that makes you
pace.
feel like such a failure, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, like like my dissertation piece, which was 4880 880 words. It took me 9 months to do. It was just like though it's not quite as much as Stephen King. It was just sort of like, to borrow from epic rap battles of history. In 8 bars, I can write a whole bestseller.
Yeah,
That does seem to be the speed he writes because he's got a garage full of complete multiple draft novels that aren't published, and he's one of the most published authors of the modern era. And this is his collection of stories they don't want to publish.
he also writes in a lot of detail. Does Stephen King?
Yeah,
I don't think we'd get through a
yeah,
Stephen
he's.
King a week.
We might have to do something. No, but I think possibly doing one or two of his more famous ones
Yeah,
might be a good thing to do in the future.
yeah,
Because,
perhaps.
frankly, we'd be here a very long time if we were to just do Stephen King stories.
There are a lot of
that
them.
that is for the future. We have the yeah. possibly more of them than there are Sherlock Holmes stories, and a lot of those are short stories.
uh,
And now looking that up.
okay, so I mean, The Resident Patient is
Yeah.
a pretty straightforward story anyway.
Yes.
It's
Holmes and Watson. I believe this one is back in 221B Baker Street.
yeah.
Yes, they are in 221B.
Yeah. And Holmes notes that a
And
doctor has come to consult them.
yeah, this was a
Sorry?
yes. After Holmes suggested going outside for a walk. This is after Holmes suggested going outside for exercise's sake. Because Holmes has also just broken one of his test tubes while messing with chemicals, so they possibly need to air the place out a bit before, because chemicals.
Yeah.
Yeah. But a doctor has come to visit them, a general practitioner, I believe. Not long in the practice, and good deal to, but has had a good deal to do. Come to consult us, I fancy. He spots this because of tools on the back of the cart and stuff like that. And they go up, and there is a doctor waiting for them.
And he says, "I'm glad to see you've been waiting only a few minutes."
He spoke to my coachman, and he was like, "No, the candle beside you that you lit tells me that."
The doctor's name is Percy Trevelyan. So
Yeah.
I can't help but picture Sean Bean in GoldenEye because Trevelyan.
Yes, that was it. I have been racking my head for Trevelyan.
Alec
Got it
Trevelyan.
down to thinking it was one. Yeah, I was thinking it was one of the NPCs in oh god, I've just forgotten the game series now. Dishonor. Dishonored.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking the nobles in there was a Trevelyan, but Alec Trevelyan, yes. Yeah, and Watson actually recognizes this name for as he is an author of a monograph on obscure nervous lesions, and he takes a bit of thank you for knowing my publishers tell me it's sold poorly, so thank you for being one of the few who actually have read my work.
Yeah.
Flushed with pleasure, that was peacocking was the phrase that was going through my head, but not quite what I wanted.
Yeah. Which, like, that's a nice little feeling there when someone runs into someone who's read their work.
Yeah.
I imagine. But, it's a nice interaction, is what I was trying to say.
Yeah. And the doctor has come because he needs advice because something strange has happened at his practice recently. We learn a bit about his history that nervous lesions are his what he wants to specialize in, but he's in general practice at the moment, and he got awards, he wrote the monographs, he was noted, but he didn't have capital to get onto one of the dozen or so streets that give you a good future of being a doctor in London, and like all the tools that you need set up and stuff.
Yeah.
But one day, a man came to him. Blessington.
Yes.
The man called Blessington came to him and was willing to invest in his doctor's practice. In which he would pay for lodgings. He'd give the building. He'd give some pocket money, and in return, he'd take 3/4 of the money the doctor made.
Yeah.
To to cover his investment.
That is a sizable
And
chunk of his
which,
earnings.
By the sounds of it, yeah, but by the sounds of it, he still came off the better for it.
Yeah.
But he accepted it. Mr. Blessington would also live on the same premises as a resident patron because his health was not always the best. But it went on, and the practice went on for a while and was going well. And Mr. Blessington stuck to a very sensible routine, or a very stable routine. Regular, that's the word I wanted. Sensible, stable, regular. We'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah. But then there was a time some weeks earlier where Mr. Blessington came down and was in a state of agitation about a series of some robbery or another in the West End.
A robbery in the West End?
Yes. And he talked about getting sort of like more secure doors and windows and stuff like that. And he essentially had to be put on the sofa, lie down, and calmed from his fears. Also it feels no, it took a while for him to return to his normal habits. That's what happened. And I thought on a much shorter term than it was, because could you imagine being a doctor there for a few weeks, just calming the same man on a sofa constantly for weeks?
Yeah. So this the titular resident patient yeah, Mr. Blessington, I know we've already named him.
Yeah.
But at some point he is in a hell of a state, and he accuses someone of being in his room, and there are footprints that aren't his.
Yes, this is after 2 days in a row that the man has had a Russian nobleman who has moved to England has come in with his son, who's built like a Hercules, they describe him as, has come in to talk to him about his specialist area of interest to examine the father. And both times, well, the first time, he goes to get a medicine that he wants to try because the father seems to have got into one of the trances, coma-like state, briefly in one of the states. He goes to get medicine, and when he comes back, both father and the son are gone. But they come back the next day and apologise because the father walked out, and the son just assumed the consultation was over and didn't realise his father was in one of these states until much later. So they come back again around the same time and goes on. He tries, and that's when Blessington later that day comes down and says that someone has been in his room and is in all of a panic.
Yeah.
And that's what brings the doctor see Holmes and Watson, as he wants their assistance. Yeah.
And they go to visit him. Yeah. He threatens them at the door with a pistol, and so when Holmes tries to,
and they manage to,
hold on.
Yeah, Holmes questions him. After they manage to get him to calm down and put the pistol away, and questions trying to find out what he knows of them. Yeah.
And he points at a little black box and says, basically everything I own is in that, so you can understand what it means to me when unknown people force themselves into my room. Holmes looked at Blessington in his questioning way and shook his head. I cannot possibly advise you if you try to deceive me, said he.
But I told you everything.
Holmes turned on his heel with a gesture of disgust.
Good night, Dr. Trevelyan.
And no advice for me? Cried Blessington.
No advice for me?
My advice to you, sir, is to speak the truth. That struck me as unusually cold for Sherlock. Like,
yes, but it is also revealed a bit as to why he might have been in cold later on.
Yeah. But at the time I was reading it, I was like, are you really
Holmes
just...
yeah. Yeah. Holmes apologises for dragging Watson along on this fool's errand, even though it is an interesting case at the bottom. And Watson's like, I can make little of it.
As is characteristic of their dynamic at this point. It's like, yeah, Sherlock, you know the deal. I can't see a thing. You're gonna have to illuminate me here.
Yeah, and Holmes tells them that two men, possibly more, are after Blessington for some reason, and they were using the condition as a convenient device to get them into the doctors and keep Trevelyan busy. It was a fraudulent imitation of the illness, but let's not tell Trevelyan that. It might knock his confidence a bit. He also says it's a very easy complaint to imitate, and that he himself has done it.
Yeah.
And there's by pure chance that Blessington has been out when they've come to call for him, as it were. And that they chose the unusual hour because no one else would be in the waiting room, so that the son, quote unquote, could go upstairs and try and find him or break into his room. But they're not clearly after plunder, because otherwise the black box would be gone, and there would have been signs of them searching for it. So it seems that Blessington has made two vindictive enemies, at least.
Yeah.
Holmes is sure that Blessington knows who the men are and why they're doing it, but is choosing not to say.
Which is, why, like, he goes home and says, perhaps tomorrow we may find him in a more communicative mood. And, Watson suggests an alternative hypothesis, which is unusual.
Yeah, he's done it a couple of times. Watson's alternative is that the Russian and the son are fictional, and that Trevelyan is the one who has been breaking into the room, attempting to. And Holmes says, I thought about that and dismissed it because of the shoes, dear boy. The shoes! The ends of the shoes are wrong, and the shoe size is wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but the next day they get a message early on. Sherlock again awakes Watson bright and early by appearing in his room, basically. He says, there's a burr waiting for us, Watson. What's the matter then? The Brook Street business. Any fresh news? Tragic, but ambiguous. Look at this. For God's sake, come at once, PT. It is an urgent call. So they are within 15 minutes. They are back at the physician's house, and he's there horrified. Oh, such a business! Blessington has committed suicide. Holmes whistles. It's just sort of like, blimey, that's a surprise. He sort of is what you imagine.
Yeah.
Yes, he hanged himself during. Sounds like it should be he hung himself rather than hanged himself.
No.
But
Men are hanged. Dead meat is hung.
mm, yeah, they entered and they go up and have a look, and the Trevelyan stays in his waiting room. The police are already upstairs, and he was found by the maid in the morning, the one who brings him his cup of tea every morning.
Yeah, which is just like a textbook opening to a murder mystery, isn't it?
Yeah, and amusingly, this is towards the end of the story, as there's not really much left. But
Yeah,
they go up. We get a bit of a description of the body, which isn't flattering as one would imagine of a hanged body. But the inspector is happy to see Sherlock, and Sherlock knows who it is. Is Inspector Lanner.
yeah.
So another new inspector, but at least it's not Lestrade.
Given how prominently he's featured in adaptations, I would have expected more Lestrade than we've had.
Yes, and Captain Tommy Gregson as well.
Yeah.
Because he appeared quite prominently in Studying Scarlet.
Yeah.
Yeah. The detective concludes that the man had been driven out of his senses by fright. And part of the evidence is that apparently suicides are most common around 5 in the morning.
I was not aware of that.
This is according to the text. It's about 5 in the morning, you know, that suicides are most common. I
can't confirm or deny that.
Yeah, I don't know whether that was Conan Doyle making some absolute bullshit up, whether that was believed fact at the time, whether that was proven fact at the time. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just seems ridiculous. Yes, then again, that might have been when a load of people were coming down off of the day's drugs, so
yeah,
maybe some truth to it
possibly
during the Great Binge.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, the officer concludes it was a very deliberate affair. And Watson says that he's been dead about 3 hours based upon rigidity of the muscles, so rigor mortis.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Holmes asks anything unusual about the room, and the officer notes, yes, screwdriver and some screws on the washhand stand. And he seemed to have smoked heavily during the night. There are 4 cigars ends that I picked out of the fireplace.
Yeah.
And then Holmes like, have you got his cigar holder? It's like, none. I have seen none. His cigar case then? Yes, it was in his coat pocket. Holmes looked aside and smells the singular cigar inside. Yeah, and and he concludes that this is a Havana, and those are a Dutch brand imported from their India colonies that are usually packed in straw and are thinner. And look, 2 of them show signs of being between teeth, and 2 within a hot cigar holder. Ergo, there were at least 2 people smoking, and he was neither of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he inadvertently made it easier for them by keeping a rope. Huh.
Yes, because he had a rope because of his fear of if he needed to get out of the house burning, he'd climb out of the window.
Yeah.
And also his sturdy light fitting, because it's revealed that the people brought a hook of some sort to screw in to then hang him from, because of as evidenced by the screws and the screwdriver, but they didn't need it.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they were committed to the premise that they brought a hook to install. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Holmes hasn't pieced everything together quite yet, and indeed, that last bit about the hook and stuff is one of the bits he still needs to piece together. But he's confident he will have it by afternoon, and
and he immediately suggests arresting the page who he understood has come recently into the service, but he couldn't be found. So his disappearance paints him in a pretty guilty light, I would say.
yes, they suggest raising the page, and Sherlock goes. He has played a not unimportant part in this drama, the three men having ascended the stairs, which they did on tiptoes, the elder man first, the younger man second, and the unknown man in the rear. My dear Holmes, I ejaculated.
Watson
The
ejaculated.
ejaculation returned.
It's been a while since.
Yes, a good 9 stories at least.
Yeah. Since Watson ejaculated. uh,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, he concludes that they pick the lock to get into the room with the aid of a wire. He can see the marks that it leaves. That the three men climbed up the stairs on tiptoes, based upon the impressions they've left in, well, just on the surfaces. That they overpowered him and stopped him shrieking, and tied him up, and a consultation of sorts was held. Probably something in the nature of a judicial proceeding. The cigars were smoked, and the older man was sat in the wicker chair. He used the cigar holder, and the younger man sat over yonder. He'd act his ash off against the chest of drawers. The third fellow paced up and down. Blessington was most likely sat upright in his bed, but he cannot be 100% sure.
yeah.
And the proceedings ended with them taking and handing Blessington, and that was clearly what they were here to do, because hook,
Yeah.
some sort of block or pulley which might serve gallows. Yeah, having done their grisly work, they left, and the boy who worked there locked the door to make it after them, so that nothing would seem amiss until the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Holmes goes out and says, "I'll be back by 3." He and
basically, I'll have figured it out by then.
Yeah, I'll figure it out. Meet me back here at 3. Me and Watson are going back home for breakfast. Oh no, they came to Baker Street at 3.
Yeah.
Any news, Inspector? We found them all. Excellent. Now I've got the men. Got them? We cried, all 3, because Watson hasn't realised that Holmes has identified the men as well. Well, at least I got their identity.
The so-called Blessington is, as I expected, well known at headquarters, and so are his assailants. Their names are Biddle, Hayward, and Moffat.
The Worthington bank gang? Cried the
Yeah.
inspector.
One of the descendants of which would later have his revenge on Arthur Conan Doyle. Sorry.
Yes, and also Doctor Who as well for some unknown reason.
uh, I don't think he's that bad, but
No, it's a bit of a long-standing joke. I don't think Moffat's a bad writer.
he's
I
just
think
not.
he's a bad arc writer.
Yeah.
Like
I've
he's not
described him as British J.J. Abrams. Well,
like good in for short runs. Like he can do two-parters, he can do individual episodes. But if you want him to write an entire season arc, you'll try and tie all 3 seasons off and give the name of all of the big things that you need to know about in the first episode.
yeah.
A la the first Matt Smith episode.
Yeah.
But yes, but they conclude that Blessington was the fourth member, Sutton, and that 5 men were convicted of it, and the fifth man was called Cartwright, and he got the caretaker was murdered, and they got away with £7,000. We have a date for that one as well of when they got away with it. So is that currency calculator available?
Got it up. All right.
£7,000 in 1875.
All right. £7,000 in 1875. You say?
Yep.
We are looking at £696,207.54. So, the best part, the lion's share of £1 million.
About 100. Yeah. So split 5 ways, 120,000 each, roughly.
Yep. Yeah.
So all 5 of them were caught, but there wasn't much evidence until Blessington turned informer. Basically, he ratted out the other 4, and got immunity for it. And by the sounds of it, nabbed the rest of the 7,000 that was meant for the others as well.
Yeah.
Well, and Blessington was also described earlier as not trusting banks. Now we know why. Yeah, but Cartwright got the noose, and the other 3 got 15 years apiece. But they got out for good behaviour or whatever. That's not stated why, but they got out early. And they proceed to hunt down the traitor and avenge the death of their comrade. And third time's the charm.
Yeah.
And the day he panicked and mentioned about a robbery on the West End that concerned him was the day he learned that they'd been let free. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't tell anyone about any of this or his concerns or anything, because even though he wouldn't have been hunted down by law, it would have made it easier for them to find him, because he was under an assumed name, rather than if it got out that Blessington was Sutton, which evidently it still did. Yeah. One just possibly saw him one day and that was it.
Yeah. And, well, the reason Holmes knew he was lying was because he didn't want to reveal his identity.
Yeah, but yeah.
And he said, however, wretched as he was still living under the shield of British law, And I have no doubt, Inspector, that you will see that though that
No,
shield may fail to guard, the sword of justice is still there to avenge.
yes,
Which is
yes, and
a fitting closing line from Holmes in it. Where,
it's a fitting closing line from Holmes, but it's not actually the last line.
no.
In this first got art. Such was a singular circumstances in connection with the resident patient and the Brook Street doctor. From that night, nothing has been seen of the three murderers by the police, and it is surmised at Scotland Yard that they were amongst the passengers of the ill-fated steamer Nora Karenina, which was lost some years ago with all hands upon the Portuguese coast, some leagues to the north of Obtoro, over there. The proceedings against the page broke down for want of evidence, and the Brook Street mystery, as it was called, has never until now been fully dealt with in any public print. So
Yeah.
it's another one where the murderers get away, but nature may have taken care of them for her.
Yeah.
That's twice that happened. If I had a nickel, I'd have two nickels. Which isn't much, but it's strange it's happened twice.
Yeah. That felt like a very short story.
I think comparatively it is.
Yeah. I mean, I
Have a
read
look.
that in about, like, 15 minutes.
Yeah, I'm having a look at them. So that's
At 3.5 times speed on Audible, following along with the book, as I do.
Yeah, it's about 40 minutes on the audiobook. So at 3 times speed, it would take you less than 15 minutes.
Ah.
Yeah.
So, well, I did restart it a couple of times because in the book there is a passage missing, like, or written differently, and it really threw me off. I couldn't call it to mind now, but the written version and the audiobook version have some differences, which is the first time I've encountered that. Apart from the fact that in the book I have the Adventure of the Yellow Face isn't in this collection of stories. I think that's in His Last Bow or something.
Cardboard box.
So yeah, the cardboard box. The Yellow Face. The Yellow Face is number 2 in the Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes. In the book I have. It's the cardboard box that isn't where it should be.
Yeah, the cardboard box, which as a historical curiosity, was not published with this group, even though it had been released, because of mentions of adultery. Not from the brutal murders that took place with it as a result of the adultery, but mentions of adultery were bad enough to have that postponed and possibly never added into a collection until much later.
The unusually brutal recollection of murders as well, like for Sherlock Holmes even.
Yeah, but it was the fact that the man's wife was cheating on him that was the yeah.
Standards were weird.
Yeah, it's still are today, if we're actually honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was I figured out that Blessington was obviously had done something wrong in the past and was hiding, and that these people were coming for him.
Yeah.
I would never have guessed that he was a bank robber, though I probably should have by the fact he didn't trust banks.
Yeah, the clues were there in hindsight.
Even though... Yeah, well, he was a man of a nervous disposition who wanted a live-in doctor who didn't trust banks. I'm surprised they didn't try and portray him as Jewish, because unfortunately those were tropes in media at the times related to Jewish people.
Yeah.
To be fair, those are the tropes that have also survived to the modern day of Jewish people in media. It's not accurate, but it is the tropes associated with them. No, it's a lot better than some of the tropes that are resurfacing and have resurfaced in between this and the 40s. And indeed would have been active in the time before this, because anti-Semitism was still rife in the 1880s. It died down for a bit, and then it rose up again nastily, and then died down for a bit, and then rose up again nastily. Sorry, a bit of an aside that perhaps shouldn't have been dug into.
No, it's fine. It's
But
fine.
yes, that was
Yeah.
it was an interesting story, and what did you think of it overall?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really. I kind of just breezed through that one. It was a nice adventure of the week for Sherlock Holmes, as a lot of these are. Like,
Yeah. Is this sort of like two days work and my reputation has gone up? And what I'm actually doing is the police are doing hard work, and I'm taking the information and putting it together. Though to
Yeah.
be fair, I do let the police take the credit, most of the credit. But
Yeah.
now I have my personal chronicler.
So, that was those three stories. Next week we will be getting on to the final three in the memoirs of Sherlock Holmes, and they are the Greek Interpreter, the Adventure of the Greek Interpreter, the Adventure of the Naval Treaty, and the Final Problem.
It's the final problem.
Yeah, perhaps we'll finally meet.
I couldn't predict.
No, I get it. I would have done
Moriarty!
Yeah, perhaps we'll finally meet James Moriarty, who is also a character in Star Trek, ostensibly.
Yes. Yes, you've just started season 7, haven't you?
Yeah, well, I'm about 3 or 4 into season 7.
Yeah, that's just started, given it's a 20-odd episode season.
Yeah.
And but yes, interesting fact. When they first did the Sherlock Holmes episode where James Moriarty appeared, they got in serious trouble with the Sherlock Holmes estate, with the Arthur Conan Doyle estate.
Really?
Because it wasn't public domain yet. They'd done it a few years too early. They thought it was in public domain, so just did it without seeking permission.
Oh no!
But it wasn't, so they needed permission. They came to an agreement.
Well, that's good.
They came to an agreement. They couldn't do anything in relation to Sherlock Holmes again properly until it re-entered public domain, or until it entered public domain.
Yeah.
But yeah. This is why you check. This is why you check.
The things that you don't think you need to check on are the things you're most often wrong about.
Yes. So yeah. Yes. Yeah. A random historical fact. I'd say historical fact as if that didn't happen like around the time I was born. That thing was going on.
Yeah. Anyway, we hope you've enjoyed this little discussion. We will see you next week for the end of the memoirs of Sherlock Holmes. Let's see. The next thing I do will be Solo Saturday, where I'm going through the Sonic games. Although I'm currently butting my head against the brick wall of a Super Boss in Clair Obscur, so, like, knowing me, there's a fair chance that I'll just try and stream that. But no, I'll do the thing I'm supposed to be doing. And then the day after that, we'll be returning to Middle-earth for more Shadow of War, or Shadow of War, as we stylize the title, for Assassin Sunday.
Yes. We are the Sunday Assassins. We are at war.
Yes. And
we have an orc we need to hunt down. The bastard.
Yes. Revenge. I will I'll find him.
Renge. Yes.
Renge. Okay.
Yeah. It's hard to miss it. It's no log.
Yeah. But yeah. And then Mondays, I am doing a Like a Dragon series run with my other co-host Murasaki's Pit, and Tuesday, Tome Raider Tuesday, or I think we're rebranding to Turn-Based Tuesday for Final Fantasy and other such games. That is the plan. And yeah, that's me schedule. Join us next Wednesday for Tome Raider for the next.
Then,
oh yeah, and later that night.
And also on Tuesday.
Oh, yeah. Go on.
You can join us on twitch.tv/eclectichawk.
That's twitch.tv/eclectichawk. I'll play where we're characters in his D&D campaign. I'm playing a Minotaur pro wrestler.
And I am currently a pirate captain because my main character, a fishing spear, has been kidnapped.
If you need more context, tune in.
And no, I will not. Yes.
Right, that's us. Good night, everybody.
Yes.